Welcome to the LowCarbMD podcast. No one is beyond help. No one is beyond hope.
As we have always said, we are bringing you medical information and cutting-edge science, but none of this is medical advice. Please seek out input from your own doctor.
Hello and welcome to the Low Carb MD podcast. Today we have a cool guy who's made some life changes, and we got connected through Maria Emmerich, who's one of my heroes. I don't know how you all go back and all that kind of stuff. So Tro's running a little late today, so we're just gonna start without him. And he's on New York time. They have different clocks than the rest of us on the West Coast and all that stuff. So Rotimi Rainwater, welcome, man. It's so good to have you. Tell us about your story and how you got started and how we're all connected here.
Well, listen, thanks for having me on. It's awesome to be here. I just wanted to share, I told you a few minutes ago, I just kind of had this fanboy moment, because one of the things that really helped solidify that I was on the right journey was seeing that documentary film Fat Fiction that you were in. And so when I knew that I wanted to start my journey, it was just something that really, it really helped make me feel comfortable with that transition. And so then when I see you for the first time on the screen, I'm like, oh my God, that's that guy. So it just, it's awesome to be talking to you.
Yeah, usually it's pretty awesome until they actually talk to me. Then it's a huge letdown. So hopefully I won't lay you down, man. Yeah. So tell people your story about, you see this, you start making some life changes. You're busy. You're doing stuff in Hollywood and all this kind of good stuff. And then, tell people about you and what you're doing.
Sure. So yeah, I'm a filmmaker. I specialize in documentaries, and I've spent the past 20 years really focused on my career. And in that, it really means that I started really, focusing on my career and neglecting my health. And, my weight started slowly climbing. But for the past 6.5 years, I worked on a documentary film about homeless kids. And we traveled all over the country, living on the streets with these kids. And my weight ballooned up to 358 pounds. And so we released the film in theaters on February 28th of last year. And then by March 10th, all theaters have been shut down. COVID was shut down. And I was really looking at myself, because I'm in the film because I'm a former homeless youth myself. And I just realized how big I'd gotten. And I have 2 beautiful daughters. And I just came to an awakening that I'm not going to be able to control my career. You see everybody got shut down, but our film, my entire career just got put on hold. So March 1st, I decided I was going to do something about my weight. And the film that you were in came out March 10th, I believe. So within that, and taking a step back, I had tried earlier to do a all meat diet. When I was 28, so in 98, I had some heart palpitations. I was a dancer, and we used to travel all over the world. And long story short, I just hadn't been taking care of my body. And I went on this Ayurvedic fast of just red meat and a bunch of desiccated adrenals. And my body had been fine since then. So I figured, let me try to do something like that when I really needed to lose weight. And since then, I've lost 105 pounds. And I started trying to do the keto thing, but a lot of the whole net carb conversation and the keto snacks and everything, it just didn't seem to do well for me. And I think it's everybody's body types, but I'm like a machine. If I try to negotiate with myself and say I can have a little bit of this or a little bit of that, it just doesn't work. So every day it's really the same thing. I'm eggs in the morning, chicken at lunch, either eggs or some steak or ground beef at dinner. On the weekends, I have salad or maybe a keto bagel. So I give my weekends to get a little bit of fiber or whatever. But as I said, I've lost 105 pounds, and my cholesterol is much lower. I was just a little borderline, but even at my heaviest, not pre-diabetic, no high cholesterol, no high blood pressure. And since I've started that, I'm down to right at 100 to 105 pounds, so like 253. And I've never felt more energy. It's everything that you guys said, turning that whole food pyramid upside down. It just completely changed my entire existence.
Man, that's amazing, man. 105 pounds. That is something to talk about. So, I love that when you have a passion for something, when you go through something like me struggling with my weight my entire life, right? You get a passion for something, you start seeing benefit for people. Being a homeless youth and having that heart of making this movie to help bring their plight to everyone else. And I'll tell you, it's kind of funny when we're talking about it is that movie, Fat Fiction, was supposed to come out in the theaters, then COVID hit, and it changed everything for them too. It had got released on video, and man, what a stressful time for them, and for everyone, and especially being a filmmaker. Now you sit back and think, wow, where's the future going, right?
Yeah.
So you changed course professionally and personally.
Well, now it's coming full circle because as a filmmaker, I am always questioning things. And so people I met Maria because we both worked with Halle Berry. Halle was in my film Lost in America. And so, I'm looking at pictures of everybody that I've worked with in the past, and I talked to some of the celebrities because I'm not a huge director, but I've been blessed to work with people. And they all say, you should be so proud of yourself. And if I'm being honest, when I look at pictures of myself, I don't really go, wow, I've done this great job. All I can really think about is just like, how in God's name did I let myself go like that? How did I go from being someone who was a professional dancer to this obese guy? So on my journey of weight loss, it's just created more questions. I've been asking myself, like, how did I get that big? And how as Americans have we gotten that big? And why is no one really talking about it? So coming full circle, I'm developing a docuseries about it called Fat in America. So I seem to always do that. Like, I wanted to tell the story of what I experienced when I was homeless and spent 6 years on Lost in America. And now we're going to do a project called Fat in America somehow. So yeah, it just comes full circle.
And so in your journey so far, have you learned anything about yourself? Because I hear that all the time because people have such judgment. If someone's 400, 500 pounds, people say, well, how'd you let yourself get there? Instead of saying, okay, here's where we're at. Let's start from here and start taking that one step at a time, right? Because when we're on our journey, people don't know where you are on your journey, And so I think that's so important, such a huge, important topic.
What I've learned about myself is I can rationalize anything. I'll give you an example. There was a diet I tried called the enzyme diet. And I think it was like, you had like a half a grapefruit in the morning and like 5 saltine crackers with some cheese at lunch. And then at one point, the saltine crackers and cheese were for breakfast. And so I rationalized that somehow that, for breakfast, I should have saltine crackers and cheese. So literally my crew gave me a hard time. We would be on the road. And for 2 or 3 years, every morning, my breakfast was 16 saltine crackers and 2 pieces of sliced cheese, I guess, I know for me, we grew up in public housing. I ended up homeless. So I think I went to McDonald's once or twice in my childhood. Like, it was very infrequent. So when I became an adult and I finally started doing something, I'm making some money, it was like, I'm going to experience everything I never got to before. And food became my way of expressing myself. So, great news, let's go out on a date. Having a really horrible day, let's just get something good to eat, or, I want to go on a date with my woman. So like, let's have a great meal. And food just became the way that I dealt with anything. And then I would start rationalizing, well, I'm just focused on my career, so don't focus on your weight, you'll be fine. And David Goggins, this great motivational speaker guy, said it best. The only way that you're going to accomplish it is when you learn that your health comes first beyond anything else, and you got to stop negotiating with yourself, So I just turned off the way that I felt. Like I say once a month or once every 2 months, I'll say, okay, let me take a day off or a weekend off, and I just want to enjoy myself. But other than that, I've spent 30 years living to eat it's okay to now that I spend hopefully the next 30 or 40 years of my life just eating to live.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge thing because you touch on so many important things, and I think we have a shared view of this. Like I'm giving a talk, as a matter of fact, it's already prepared for Low Carb USA in San Diego. It's one size fits one. What works for you? Let's figure that out, right? Not everyone wants to do what whoever is doing. You don't have to run 55 miles a week or whatever you're doing. It's figure out, hey, what's acceptable in your life? What can we change? What little changes can we start with? Can we do radical? Like what you said is, if I don't go all in, I'm a disaster. And there's people like that. And I have other people go, yeah, I have pizza once a month and I'm fine. I go back and I'm back on it tomorrow, And so that's why it's so important to say, how do we really impact people? How do we give them hope to take that first step, whether it's a movie, like Fat Fiction, or and that's why I was so excited about that when I saw. I was like, wow, they did a good job. And it's people are going to hear that. They need to see, not propaganda. They need to see, look, there's real people that are taking 20 drugs and now they're off their meds, right? There's hope now for people. Fat Fiction, the magic pill was one that impacted me. When I saw that, I was like, wow, if that's true, how come we're not looking at these things, right? Yeah. So it opens your mind to a new frontier, basically, in medicine.
I think it's really also about, I've said it on videos I've done, I call it finding your bliss, but it's really, if you boil it down to, it's like, what is it that you really, that means the most to you, And for me, once I had my children, I realized like I could rationalize, I could do everything that I'm doing now. And then I would, and it'd be the same excuses like, oh, I can't do this and I can't do that. And then I think in this one video I was talking and I said, but then it'll turn into, no, baby, I can't go to Disney with you because I don't fit in the rides. Or, it's eventually going to lead me laying in my deathbed because I get some strange disease from being obese, and then trying to explain to my daughter, I'll always be there for you, like don't ever forget that I'll always be there for you. And I think that's the truth. Like people with any issue that could cause mortal danger to them, cigarette smokers, my mother was an alcoholic, I'm a food addict, or however you would describe it. You've got to find that reason. You've got to say to yourself, is what I'm doing right now more important than my child? Or is it more important than living a full life? And I never really thought about it like that. I always thought, I was cocky as an overweight person. Like I wasn't the guy who was like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. No, I was still really cocky. I never thought of myself as a fat person. And it's a strange thing, but it's just like, I had to find the reason why. And I think that people need to really, there needs to be a wake-up call, that people really need to understand that, man, if you don't take care of yourself, you won't be there and somebody's going to miss you, or you're going to miss someone. So yeah, it's just finding that, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a key. That is a huge thing for anyone listening, right? Find your why, right? And I've heard that said so many times, like saying, why are you doing this? What's your motivation? What's going to keep you from binging? And it's hard because a lot of people, it's hard because I think we've been, and I think this is one thing that your documentary is really going to help people with. We've been told that we're just lazy, we have no willpower, right? And so people just kind of give up on you. And I think it's a real, and I think it's a hard thing and with regard to things like feeling good about yourself at any weight and then saying, okay, I want to be healthy. And so there's a fine line there between fat shaming and saying, okay, we want you to be healthier. Yeah. Right. And you want to live longer and you want to be able to go out and play games with your grandkids and do things like that.
You made a good statement. They think that overweight people, I think fat people, are lazy. So when I started out in the film business, I wasn't heavy at all, but I wasn't as active as other people. And I had some friends who were in the stunt world. And so when I got bigger, they were always saying to me that I focus on developing the yin and not the yang, right? And they were like, you've got to develop both of those. And they thought that I was lazy because I didn't spend a lot of time on the physical. And it wasn't that I was lazy, it's just not what interested me. Like what interested me was writing. And like I would get so excited for a new movie that's coming out, or if I got a new project and I didn't want to think about anything else, and I would work 12, 16 hours a day. So it wasn't that I'm lazy, and I don't think that most people are lazy. I think that they just are passionate about something else. And a lot of people who get overweight just aren't as active, because they're passionate about gaming or writing or whatever it is that they're passionate about. So I think as overweight people, we need to understand that you can't allow other people to define you. You've got to find your self-worth. But in that conversation, which will lead me to a conversation about the body positive movement. But in that conversation, you've also got to remember, hey, just take a little bit of time. We've got to learn that discipline. Like, there are a lot of people I know who are like really, really physical, but they don't do much reading, let's say, and so they're not developing that side of them. And we don't really push them to do that. So I think as overweight people, we just have to find a way to say to ourselves that we're not lazy, but maybe we're not doing what we should be doing physically.
How did you do it? Like, when you're filming and you're out on the scene and everyone brings donuts and bagels. Because what I hear a lot of people say, well, I try to do it, but then my husband brings home all this garbage food, so I have to eat it, and instead of saying, and the thing I love is I have a lady right now, she listens to the podcast and she's a huge blessing to me. But, she says, look, she went on vacation for 2 weeks. She brought her scale with her so she could keep track. And I said, really? I've never heard of I've never in my life thought about taking a scale with me. She said, it keeps me on track and it doesn't stress me out and it helps me to stay focused. And she says, when I get on the airplane, I'm taking 3 hard-boiled eggs. I'm taking this. And she's planned her whole thing out. She knows.
Wow.
So she goes, I'm not going to sit there and say, well, that's all there was, so I had to eat pizza and donuts, right? So she planned so far ahead, and she said it gives her control of her situation better than saying, oh, well, that's all they had, so I had to eat it, right? Because a lot of us just say, I want donuts, so I'll just say, oh, I didn't have anything else, so I had to have that, right?
Yeah.
So how did you handle that on the sets and when you're out?
Oh, well, I didn't start my weight loss until afterwards. When I was on the set, I was uncontrollable. My biggest thing was sodas. I used to drink on a regular basis 5 to 6 sodas a day, and it was my tea in the morning with a Coke, and then maybe I'd have another Coke, maybe not, but I'd have 2 Red Bulls in the afternoon and 2 ginger ales at night. It was just my routine. And so when I was on the set, no, it was after filming that I went back and really refocused. But what I've realized with me, so like I'm 100% all in. Like I won't skip, I won't cheat. Like this is my life until I'm going on vacation. And then I realized now that I can go on vacation or I can take a weekend off, and I know I'm going to come back on it Monday. But when I come back on it Monday, the thing about me is I can't negotiate. Like I can't say I'm doing this, but then I'm going to have like a keto ice cream later. Like I'm just not going to do any of those things because it's a slippery slope. But I just went on a vacation with my family. It was our first vacation in 6 years. And we went to Hawaii and we were out of town for 10 days. And I was doing 3 or 4 pina coladas a day. Like I just was like, I'm just enjoying myself. And I gained 18 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, but then I lost 11 pounds of the first like 5 days back. So
that is a great point, man. I'm gonna interrupt you just for a second here because that's a great point. I've done that. I did an experiment where I'm gonna drink wine every night for a week during Christmas and New Year's to prove a point to one of my patients, and I gained like 8 pounds. But I lost 8 pounds within, like a day of fasting, getting back on track, because a lot of that is your insulin spikes, and now especially with alcohol and sugar together, it's like a disaster. But it raises your insulin like crazy. But that's not real fat weight. That's really insulin making you hold on to salt, and your weight goes up as water weight. You pee it out in a day or 2, right? Yeah. When you get back on track, and that's so important because people go, I gained 18 pounds, I'm giving up, I'm done.
Yes, and that was me for the longest time. And when I came back, before I left, I even was talking to some friends, and I was like, I'm probably going to come back. I know I'm at least going to gain like 10 pounds. And then I made a joke. I was like, I bet I'll probably gain like 15 pounds. And everyone's like, no way. So then when I came back, I was like, hey, I didn't gain that 10 or 15 pounds. I gained 18. But it really does go off. So I think.
So let's stop there just for a second. I'm sorry, man. I hate to interrupt you, bro. But
please.
When you were there, like, how did you feel when you got back? Did you go, okay, I'm ready to go again? Like I had my good time and I'm ready to go? Or do you feel like, oh no, I got it? Was it hard to start again?
No, because I mean, the kids are here every day. Like for me, like I'm a real hands-on dad, you know? So like I'm with both of the girls every day. And like I try to be the one to like be there when they wake up and be there when they go to bed. Like, you know, I didn't have a family growing up. So it's really important to me. So for me, it's just like, let's go crazy. Let's enjoy ourselves. I'm an extremist, you know? So if it's playtime, it's playtime. But then when I came back on a Tuesday, and then Wednesday morning I woke up and I made myself 4 eggs, and that was it. You know, I went right back to it. And, you know, it was your body, like, I was just like, okay, I just got to get used to it. Like I craved it, like in the afternoon, I was like, oh, I want some chips, or I want, you know, you're at a hotel. And so it's like chicken strips and French fries or a pina colada. But it was just a day of just like me reminiscing more than anything. But no, I think once you really find that place and you really know why you're doing this, but also you're enjoying the side effects. Like I've gone from a size 48 waist to a 38 waist. I almost don't have to shop in big boy clothes places anymore. And like the vanity of that is cool. Like it's like, oh, I could go and I could like rock some great gear and I could look cool, and like, you know, all the things about that. It was my daughter's 13th birthday and I could go to Knott's Berry Farm and get on the rides. And it was just like, yeah, this is awesome. But then also I do know I'm still 253. And so I'm trying to lose another 75 pounds. So I'm not there 100% yet.
Yeah, neither am I, man. We're all on the journey together. And I think that's it. When you start saying, okay, let me enjoy the journey, because some people make the journey so miserable. It's like, hey, and look what you enjoy. Do you enjoy having eggs for breakfast? Does that make you tortured? And, you know, there's so much stuff we can do. And then you say, I really enjoy eating this way. I feel good. My energy is better. My focus is better. I could be a better dad. I could get down and play with the girls and not be like, oh, I'll sit on the couch and watch you guys, you know, because what I find is people who hate activity start getting more active when they're not carrying around extra weight or their joints don't hurt anymore. And it really does help that way. It
really does. You know, I think what you were talking about, the journey, that was the biggest lesson for me. On my keto filmmaker page, I made this post because there was like, you know, everybody who are on their weight loss journeys, they're always like, I'm here to share my journey. But every single post you see of them, it's like, oh, I've lost more weight. Oh, look at my great food. And it just seems like everybody's journey is perfect. And I'm like, those people are wonderful. And my journey sucks. Like it really does. Like I go through the ups and downs. And I made this video that got the most people liking my stuff, where I was like, okay, if I see another effing egg, I'm going to throw it across the room. I don't want to see another piece of steak. And I realized, like they always say, it's a marathon and it's a marathon, not a sprint. But Lao Tzu said it best, you know, the truth that can be told it's not the truth. You can hear something 100 times, but until you experience it, it doesn't really sink in. And after my first year, and I realized, man, I'm going to be on this journey. Well, I'm going to be on this journey for the rest of my life, because I will never, it's like you're an alcoholic. You're never going to go back to doing shots. You know, I'm never going to go back to eating KFC and McDonald's 3 or 4 times a week. So but I know I'm on this journey for at least another year of before I get to maintaining.
And the beauty of it is, once you get to that point, maintaining is a lot better. If you do it the right way, you're putting muscle mass on, you're staying active, you're moving around, because that's sustainability. We have a lot of people we talk to, because for me, I've seen it all. I mean, and I've experienced a lot of it too myself, trying to, you know, liquid diets and, you know, Weight Watcher, whatever it is. And so maintaining weight loss is the key. So we have people like Brian Wiley, and these are all people you'll probably be talking to on your journey, but he's maintained, you know, over 100-pound weight loss for 10 years, 15 years, whatever. And Tro, you know, my partner on the podcast, same thing. The reason I had him as a partner and I picked him of anyone I could was he was talking about running on the treadmill one day after losing, you know, tons of weight. He used to be 350 pounds, right? He lost a ton of weight and he's running on the treadmill, and it was the shame of people behind him saying, what's that guy doing here? He's wasting his time, right? He's look how fat he is. And he thought they were talking about him, and he filled with shame. And then he realized, oh, they're not talking about me, right? Because he had lost that. But in your mind, it's always there. We always are, you know, like probably certain areas, like, you know, a lot of people getting into a restaurant, they're like, oh, I can't sit in the booth because I won't fit, right? And things like that with it. The rest of everyone else doesn't really realize there's you know,
It's
shame
funny.
and
It's
guilt and
funny you
stuff.
bring that up because, like when we used to go to restaurants and they would take us to a booth, my wife and kids, they would all look and be like trying to figure out what side daddy could sit on. And now I just plop in anywhere, it's no big deal. But it's like, it's those things that, it's those things that I want to bring to light. Because when people think about fat people, they don't really think about really what it is that they're going through, And I think putting a face on obesity is really important, and more of a human face. Like you got my 600-pound life, and you had the big weight loss things, but nobody really is focusing on what people are going through, how they got there, why they're there. So
Yeah, and that's important that you're looking at that, because understanding that these are people that are smart, bright, work hard, they're trying. They just, a lot of times we've given them bad advice, right? That the medical community has,
Sure.
because if you have a doctor, and this is a funny thing all the time, they go, never take advice, health advice from a doctor who's overweight. Where you go, well, sometimes that may not be the best approach, because you don't know if that doctor's lost 200 pounds or who's on a journey themselves. But if someone who's been thin their entire life says, just do what I did, everyone just do what I did, just exercise more and eat less, right? And so it's so easy because they've never had that struggle.
yeah,
But once you start having that struggle, then you realize, okay, I'm not invincible anymore. Like when you were dancing, you were probably burning so many calories, plus you were busy,
sure.
and plus, but then you stop doing that. You're burning less calories, then you start eating more, then you feel bad because you're gaining weight. Then you start to get into this snowball effect.
I think it's funny. I call that skinny people diet tips. And I think it's hilarious because I've had so many people tell me who have never been overweight what I should do, And this one guy told me that you should eat 5 small meals a day. And I was like, man, if I had the discipline to eat 5 small meals a day, I wouldn't be big, And I did this one picture where I put 5 small meals in front of me. And I was like, this is lunch to me. Like, what? I don't understand this. And so I think the funniest thing, like you said, is when you get people who have never dealt with being obese or having a weight issue, trying to give you the diet tips. It's hilarious.
Yeah, and that's the thing is when you make changes, and just because it worked for you doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone. So a lot of us are out evangelizing. Like for me, it's funny because I walk in, people know what I do, and they'll be eating cookies that they like try to cover it up, like, oh, it's like I'm the preacher, and they're drinking a beer or something, right? So I'm like, hey, I don't care. It doesn't matter. Like, do what you want to do. It's not a big
Sure.
deal. Like, I mean, but don't complain when your pants don't fit and you can't get in your seat. At some point, it's going to be your responsibility. And that's the funny thing I've noticed is when we talk about continuous glucose monitors, when we talk about low carb, and we say, hey, look, it's not your fault that you gained all this weight because you were given bad advice, and people say you take away personal responsibility. And I say, well, no, because when I see your insulin's through the roof and I know what the problem is, we just have to fix that problem. If we don't fix the problem, you're always going to struggle. We have to fix the underlying pathology. We can't just put a Band-Aid on top of your sore.
I think people need to remember it. It's why it's called practicing medicine. Things are constantly evolving. And, the thing that was so great about, especially watching your part about how you were, I don't use the word curing, but getting people off of insulin and really like curing people of diabetes, going against what most diabetic doctors are telling their patients to do. That really was a big thing for me, because when I started and people were like telling me that my diet should be, breakfast should be oatmeal, and then it was like lunch should be fruit and some other stuff, and I just started realizing, like, man, because I was doing like 400 or 500 grams of carbs a day, like something like ridiculous, and then I started realizing, like, if I follow what most people think is the right diet, I'm still probably getting that many carbs, but now they're supposed to be low this carbs or low that carbs. And then it just never made sense to me. So seeing what it is that you guys do is one of the things that really like changed my life, because I now exist under 20 grams of carbs a day and have more energy than I've ever had. I'm doing a challenge. I'm doing a Ironman challenge where, for me, it's a lot. I'm doing an Ironman in 30 days. So 26 miles of walking, 112 miles of biking, 2.5 miles of running. And then I'm going to see if I can do it in 3 weeks, and then do it in 2 weeks. And,
Wow, that's cool. That's cool. I haven't heard of anyone
have,
doing that. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, we started this thing. So my wife pushed me at the beginning of the year. She was like, I'd love to just see you go out and exercise every day. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this thing, 100 days, 100 walks. And I did it. And I think I did like 76 miles over 100 days. So, you know, it wasn't quite a mile a day. But then everybody on Instagram was like, we want to do another one. What do you want to do? So I did this 100 days, 100 miles challenge. And we had, you know, 50, 60 people doing it with us. And all over the world, like I had somebody in Finland, somebody in Scotland, like just all over the place. And they're all logging on. And it's just crazy when you start to push yourself that one time and you see what it feels like. Like even as a dancer, I never exercised 100 days in a row. Like I would take days off, you know? So it's all my wife's fault that I am here now. But yeah, now I've realized as an extremist that I exist on challenges. Like if I just sit around and just having a regular day and I'm not pushing myself, it just doesn't seem to do something. But the idea of I'll never be able to do an Ironman in a day because I can't really run. I had double knee partial surgery. So, you know, partial replacement. So I don't think I'll ever be able to do 26 miles in a day. But I'm going to try. And then who knows, work my way up to it.
Do you think that your lifestyle changes affected anything else like mental health or anxiety or joint pains, things along those lines?
Yeah. You know, I had tore both my meniscus when I was in Africa filming something. And it took like a year and a half before I could get surgery. So I got arthritis in both knees. And for close to 10 years, I existed off of cortisone shots every 4 or 5 months and 1 or 2 Vicodin a day. And it just got to the point where like I would be at the grocery store, like leaning on my cart and could barely walk. So I got the partials on both knees. And once I started, but it was still like difficult. Like I couldn't bend over and tie my shoes, like all those things. But once I started losing the weight, and then started exercising, like any of the pain that I had left started going away. My lower back pain stopped. And it also kind of, I think the mental health aspect of it is all the limitations I had put on myself, it was like these chains breaking, you know, like I can't do that. And I'd be like, well, why can't I do it? Let me try. Perfect example. My daughters are getting into Taekwondo and gymnastics, and I'm teaching my 6-year-old how to do cartwheels. And so again, I was still 255 pounds, you know, and I'm trying to teach her and she's like, show me. And instantly I'm like, I can't do a cartwheel. And then I thought to myself, why can't I do a cartwheel? And so I did a slow one. I was like, oh my God, I can do it. So then I just started busting out cartwheels and I did this like, and then I went too far and kind of pulled my hamstring a little bit. So my age reminded me of what I couldn't do. But once you start losing the weight, all the things that you thought you couldn't do or had a reason why you couldn't do, you just realized I saw why the 70-year-old or 80-year-old people on Instagram are running marathons or doing whatever, because you really can do anything you want if you prepare yourself.
Cartwheel challenge, man. Now I'm thinking like, could I do a cartwheel? I haven't thought about that.
I did a splits challenge. I'll send you a picture.
Oh my God. Oh, you're a dancer though, man. I can't even like barely touch my knees.
I have people all over the country who are literally, this one guy lost 300 pounds, this friend of mine, Kurt, and he can go all the way down now.
That is
and just
incredible,
sit there
man.
on his splits. And it was just like, yes, if
Yeah, that
you
is
take
so
that
cool.
first step, life will meet you, you know? And if you go there, anything that you want to do, when you were overweight, could barely move and couldn't tie your shoe, you know, laying on your bed and thinking of those things that you wanted to do, if you take those steps, you can get there.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it is like finding your why. Go, look, I really want to be able to do a pull-up, or I really want to be able to do push-ups for my knees, or whatever it is, like figuring that out. I just want to play with my grandkids because, you know, when I was on vacation this year, we kind of connected at that time. And I was in Cancun and I was looking at some of the guys that they couldn't even get off their beach chair. They couldn't move. And you think, gosh, you see their kids running and playing and having fun. I was like, man, that's got to be so tough not to be able to engage, just to sit there and be drinking and eating all day long and not being able to participate. And that's part of, I think that's why your project you're doing is so important, to just tell these stories and how it is when you can't do certain things. And realizing, you know, a good friend of mine has been morbidly obese, and he says like when he's an IT guy, and then people walk right by him to the skinny guy because they think he's smarter and knows better, and he's the one who trained the other guy and knows better. And so many people have these preconceived notions of people. Go, you're lazy, you're a glutton because you're obese, right? And some of the smartest, hardest working, brightest people are struggling with that right now.
You know, you mentioned the vacation thing, and it's true. It's like when you see your old life sitting in front of you, like someone else who can barely get out of their chair, it is so rewarding. Like when we went to Hawaii, my 13-year-old and I took our first surfing lesson, and the teacher looked at me. So I'm still 250 something, and he was just like, "Well, you know, if you can't get up, are you sure you want to try it?" And I was just like, "No, I can do anything now." And I got out there and I stood up. I stood up twice and I caught my wave, and we didn't go anywhere. We just kind of went straight, but it was just awesome. I promise people, if there's anybody that's listening right now who just hasn't found their why, hasn't found their motivation, you look at the pictures of me. I was almost 360 pounds. I was wearing a 4X shirt, 48 size pants, and now I can surf. It's just insane.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you appreciate it because when you can't do it, then you can't, like, I can actually do this thing. This is pretty cool, right? Like, I got one of my guys, he's a bigger guy, and, you know, he listens to the podcast, great guy, one of my favorite patients. And he said, man, I was with my friend who's like 100, he's losing weight, but he goes, my friend's 100 pounds lighter than me. And we had to go up the garage, you know, to get to their car. And he said he was huffing and puffing and sweating and miserable. He goes, I was like, I feel pretty good. I feel really good. Like, it was surprising. He goes, like, usually he would be waiting for me at the top, and he goes, I blew him away, right? And when you see that and you know that you're getting healthier, there's something about that motivates you. Now you go, okay, now I want to take that next step, right?
Yeah, those non-scale victories are amazing.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's really important, that's why I'm excited about your project, is like knowing, look, it's not enjoy the journey and you may say, hey, like, the journey sucks still, right? But enjoying the journey as much as you possibly can, and then also realizing it's not all about the weight, it's about getting healthier, because there's people who have a lot of subcutaneous fat, which is just love handles. It's not going to kill you, but it's the visceral fat that runs around the organs and all that. And exercise really does help with that. I see people that are morbidly obese, but they exercise, they eat terrible, but they exercise and they're burning off the visceral fat still. So, you know, it's one of those things that we're going to learn on this journey of what you're seeing. And we'll see metabolically that some of these people are very healthy, but they're big.
Yeah. You know, it's not the idea, you know, I love hearing the phrase, it's not about getting thin, it's about getting healthy, you know? Like, my first goal, I wanted to be 225. Like, when I was 225, I felt great, you know, and according to the medical science, I was obese, but I felt awesome, you know? So I don't think I think that the weight scale, like, for my height, I think I'm supposed to be 155 pounds. And I think if I was ever 155 pounds, I would look like I was dying, you know? So I think the whole scale system is kind of outdated, or just, I don't know, one size fits all. But I do like the idea that people should focus on getting healthy and not just thin.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge part of it, because so many people will do exactly what you did and just give up. Like, I tell my patients, if they bloat on the weekend, they come in, they feel bad. I go, hey, look, it's a weekend, big deal. Get on with it, right? You got a whole lot of days ahead of you. But, you know, but what I'll say is, like, hey, you got one flat tire over the weekend. Don't pop all 4 of them now. Just pop one and you could fix that. It's going to be a lot easier to fix than blowing all of them up, keep driving on the rim and, you know, grind down your brakes. And, you know, it's like, forget it. You know, so it's one of those things. If you can get back on track, who cares? You go off track a little bit. I mean, you got to live your life. It's got to be something you can sustain. Sustainability is the key, because I see people who are very militant at the beginning, and then they say, screw this. And other people go, okay, I want to go really slow and really take it easy. And they take it easy for forever. And other people go, okay, what do I got to do? Let's do this thing. I'm like you. It sounds like you're one of those guys who goes, okay, tell me what to do, and I'm doing this dang thing.
Well, I am now, and it took a long time to get there. But like I said, that's always going back to finding your why, you know?
Yeah, so tell everyone about your project. Tell them, like, what motivates you now, and like what are you trying to find out? Who are you looking for? What do you want to? We already have an offer for you, by the way. One of our guests today has lost 125 pounds. He said you better get on the stick. No, I'm just kidding.
That's awesome. You know, so my goal is to do a docuseries called Fat in America. My other film is called Lost in America. So I have this whole series of things that I want to do. But when I was talking to Maria, the way I met Maria is I decided to do like a proof of concept, I wanted to start a podcast called Fat in America. And that's what we're doing. But instead of a one-on-one, I wanted to really do a round table. So we're doing like a round table version of Fat in America, basically, where we're doing one on diets. We're going to have like Maria and her husband on there. I'm going to have you on one of them. We're starting to talk about like the medical effects. So that's my big focus right now, is trying to bring to light the issue of obesity, not through how fat you are or your weight, like I use a perfect example. Did you ever watch Anthony Bourdain's, Parts Unknown? Okay. So Tony was a great chef, and it's about food, but you barely talk about food. It's really about life, So Fat in America, if it comes out the way that I want it to be, but even in the podcast, it's less about your weight and it's about the journey. It's about the existence around it. One of the episodes we're going to talk about is the body positive movement, which I think is so incredibly important. For years, throughout history, obese people were the butt of jokes, and really until maybe there's some obscure examples I don't know, but until Chrissy Metz did Us, there were no overweight actors or actresses portraying characters that had truly emotional and romantic and sensual relationships on TV. If you were the fat person, you were the comic relief, So I think the body positive movement is amazing, but I think what's getting lost in it, in the, showing that it's great to be fat, is that conversation that, yes, love yourself, but if you don't do something about it, eventually it's just a numbers game. Like, you're going to get diabetes, you're going to have heart disease. So I want to start conversations with people about being fat in America that have less about the exploitive and sensationalized versions of weight loss and more about heartfelt, authentic, self-deprecating, humorous conversations about what it's really like to be fat in America.
Yeah, and I think just being honest, I think that's what got this podcast going. Is like we're honest. We have our struggles. We're not perfect. We don't know all the answers yet. Let's bring on experts. I'll take a piece from what you're telling me, a piece from what this person's telling me, and then we say, how do we get better? How do we get better at what we're doing? How do we get better as people? How do we get better? Instead of like saying you're of a different view on this, I'm not talking to you. Say, hey, come on, let's talk, and we'll be respectful. You be respectful, and we'll have a good time. And say, maybe I'll learn something. So I've learned from some people that I stomp my feet behind the scenes. That I don't want to talk to this person. They're a jerk. And then I said, that's kind of a good point they have, right? And once I talk to them, I go, I get it. Yeah, I see where you're coming from. So I think a lot of us have to really be able to figure that out and say, okay, what do I do if I am struggling? Like when you said, hey, look, because you can say, yeah, I went on vacation, I was great the whole time, everything was perfect. But the reality is like, hey, I struggled. And everyone goes, yeah, me too. When I'm on vacation, I get into vacation mode. We get into car trip mode, road trip mode, and you go, okay, let's stop by 7-Eleven and get a Slurpee, right, kids? That's what I did when I was younger. So you start realizing, and my kids will tease me about it. They go, remember, Dad, we go for this big hike and we'd take us for Slurpees afterwards. I was like, yeah, that was kind of dumb, right? It's kind of dumb because it was non-fat.
But you learn from it, and I think that's the big deal, is like what I've learned from my travels. Like I go to San Diego a lot. One of my business partners is down there, and I'll take the kids. Alcohol for me is what helps me, is what just like pushes me over the edge with gaining weight. I'll go down for a weekend and there won't be any alcohol, and I'll gain maybe 3 or 4 pounds, and it comes off on Monday. If I go down there and have one of my meetings where there's like wine flowing or whatever, I could gain like 8 or 9 pounds in a weekend, So I've learned that it's not so much about the food that I put in my system, because I'm not a big eater. It's about the alcohol. So I think everything that we're going through on this journey is meant to teach us something. And as long as we learn, as long as we don't repeat the same mistakes, as long as we don't give up, as long as we don't get too frustrated, then it's that always keeping your eye on where you're going. And for me, where I'm going is 185 pounds. And until I get there, even though I might make a couple detours, one of my tires might go flat, I'm going to keep going. And I think that's all you can do.
Man, I love it. It's funny because this talk I'm giving is the same thing. It's like showing this road that goes like this, right? It's all windy road. It's like, okay, you're still on the road. It's going to be detours. You're going to get messed up sometimes. You're going to have the bar mitzvah. You're going to have the wedding, whatever, your anniversary, your birthday. So just figuring out those landmines and getting back on track. And sometimes it's going to be a snaking river, right? It's not going to be a straight shot like everyone thinks it's going to be. So yeah, and I think life gets in the way, and that's where another thing is, a lot of this research that's done is in a locked facility where you're there and they go, okay, you're gonna eat this today, you're gonna eat this today. I'm like, well, that's not reality. It's not reality. Reality is you're at home and someone breaks into your car and steals all your stuff, and your wife leaves you and you're stressed out and you go, okay, I need a drink, I need this, I need. So that's what we deal with. How do we keep you on track as much as possible? When you get off track, okay, great, let's get you back on track as soon as possible.
Yeah, 100%.
So I'm excited about your project, man. I mean,
I appreciate that.
Halle Berry and I were just talking about it. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. It's funny because I was, Maria Emmerich. I don't know if you know this. I'm sure this has been on part of your journey. Is that her egg pudding? Have you had the hard-boiled egg pudding?
No, I have not.
Okay, man. Well, next time you're in San Diego, come by. I'll make it for you and bring Halle with you.
I'm coming on the 10th, so I'll definitely reach out.
All right, because anyways, that's her favorite. Because it was funny because Maria Emmerich was saying, because I was saying, oh my gosh, this is so great. One of my patients told me about it. I said, it sounds gross, but you use hard-boiled eggs as your base for this pudding, right? But it comes out so good. And she said, oh, that's Halle Berry's favorite recipe. And I said, oh, that's funny. She's never mentioned it to me, right? Because of course I don't know her. So I don't run it with you Hollywood types, but I think it's so important that people like her can reach out and say, look, here's what I struggle with. Here's with diabetes, what a huge what she's doing to maintain her health, and having friends like Maria and you being friends with her and everything. I think it's just such a cool thing, because you could really help people to be healthier and live longer, healthier lives.
What I really like about this community, the weight loss community, is how supportive and authentic they really are. So when I started my keto filmmaker page, I didn't tell any of my friends, and I still don't have any of my friends on it, and it grew organically because I was just like, I'm fat, I'm trying, anybody got any advice? And just everybody just started coming together. So when I first ran into Maria, I just reached out and I was just like, this is what I'm doing. I would love to talk to you. And, Maria Emmerich is like, I don't know, 100 times New York Times bestselling author. Like, she's just a goddess, And within 2 or 3 days, she messaged me right back. She was like, yeah, let me know when you want to talk. And I just was so blown away, because in Hollywood, I could reach out to somebody big in Hollywood, man, I would just love to talk. And they'd be like, that's nice. And they're never going to message you back. So I love how supportive, even with you. I was so nervous to try to get in touch with you. And when I did, you didn't respond to me at first. And I was like, oh, but then it was just because you were busy. And when Maria emailed you, like, oh my God, yeah. And instantly, like, we jumped on the phone, and it was like we were two old friends talking. And I just think that, I just wanted to take a second just to say that I think that the weight loss community is so supportive, and it makes it so much easier if people are really authentic about, like, I want to start this journey. There's such support out there for them.
Yeah, and I think that's it. Everyone wants everyone else to succeed. That's why what we're doing with my practice, we're building community, because there's people who've been doing it for 6 months. There's people like you who are old pros doing this stuff. Some people are just starting the first day and they're like, they're like a deer in the headlights. They don't know what to do. So someone said, I used to struggle with that at night. So here's what I did. Someone, I do this. I play the guitar now instead of eating cookies, whatever. So everyone has these great things to contribute, where I could just step back and watch and see how great, but no one is derogatory to each other. It's not acceptable, right? No one's going to say, and what I love is people go, like what you said, like they'll say, I've been struggling. Because what I found when we first started the community, no one really felt that safe to be vulnerable. And then, people would be struggling with something that I would be talking about. They wouldn't say anything. And then the next day they go, I'm struggling with that. It's like, why didn't you say anything? Well, because everyone else has their act together except me. And then the next person I'm with says, everyone else is doing perfect except me. It's like, well, everyone thinks that, right? Like you said, they don't post their failures. They just post their people aren't posting when they get into a fight with their wife. They're posting when they're having champagne at, a sunlight cruise or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So, those kind of things are being real, and people love when you're just real and go, look, I struggle with it too. Like when you go, if you would have said, I got it all figured out, it's easy, I don't have any problem, and then people aren't going to buy that. They know it's not real because they know what they're dealing with.
Well, I think a part of the not wanting to share at the beginning comes from, let's be honest, I think every single one of us, like I might be an old pro now, but I have tried to diet 100 times and failed. I can tell you every way you can fail trying to lose weight, everything that doesn't work, And what you do is, especially now with social media, I would post, I'm in it, day 5, I'm doing it. And then by day 10, I'm done. And I'm just like, why did I even open my mouth?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing for anybody who's been overweight for any amount of time. So I didn't say anything to anyone about what I was doing for the first 6 months, because I was just expecting I was going to screw it all up and fall off anyways, you know? So maybe that's why that people don't like to share at the beginning, but it's totally understandable.
Hey man, if you're in town when next week we're doing the low carb USA in San Diego, I'm sure some people would love to meet you and contribute to what you're doing. So
Oh yeah, yeah,
I
we'll
do have a
talk about
couple
that for
connections
sure.
on this earth, not in Hollywood, but other places. They don't let me in that area. I guess I'm banned. I have to stay down here in San Diego. But no, I'm really excited, and you'll know you have our support, and anything we could do on the podcast if you want to come on and talk about what you're doing. That's why I'm glad you joined us. I know you're a busy guy, and
I love it.
yeah, it's exciting, man. I'm excited about your project, what you're doing, your journey. Like you're leading people out of the desert, right? You're leading out of the desert too, and the desert. But really just saying, hey, how do we do this? And we're not perfect. I think that is the message we need. We need the message of saying, how'd you get there? What's wrong with you? You're lazy. Just saying, hey, let's do something about this, and love yourself where you're at. I think that's really important. But saying I love myself not enough to keep drinking Mai Tais and
I love myself enough to not do that. Like I love myself that I took the weekend off and had Domino's or whatever it was, but I love myself enough to not keep doing that, and I think that was the big thing, like not realizing that what I was doing wasn't truly making me happy. It was giving me that instant gratification. So now I've learned to love myself enough to say, hey, Ro, that's enough. Like, get back on it. That's what's important.
Yeah, that's a huge deal. I think that there's so many important things that we're raising today, and I love it. I love your approach and how you're doing it, because you don't have to be militant. We've been called, what's the word? What are we called? When you can't hear any, like gosh, I'm blanking, like legalistic, or they say you're like not a guru. Gosh darn it, I know people are yelling it at me right now. Anyways,
I wish I could bail you out.
Yeah. Sorry, man, I can't bail out of my own brain this morning, but it's really like that you're evangelical, or you're like, that's all you talk about. That's your whole focus.
Oh no, all I talk about, I'll be honest with you. If I'm not watching, like if I'm just taking a night off, I'm watching Food Channel. I'm looking at meals I want to cook. Like I still love food, So my daughter just had some friends up, and the mom was she's actually from down there, Mexican woman. And we just start talking about pozole and carnitas, and just like all I ever want to talk about is food. So I think the idea that I'm on a weight loss, or you're the low carb MD, doesn't mean that you don't appreciate a good cheesecake, or you don't, appreciate a good Mai Tai or whatever it is. It's just that you've done that enough. Like I said before, I spent the first 30 or 40 years of my life living to eat, like that's all I could think about, until I started realizing that the only purpose of the true purpose of eating is to help you live, is to keep you alive. So yeah, I don't think we have to be evangelical. And it's funny that people think that you're
the word is, man, I'm going to bail myself with zealot.
Yes.
Zealot. Like, are you a
That's
zealot?
good.
You go do your thing, man. I don't care. Like, you want cookies, but by the same token, for me, my rule is, look, if you're going to have a Snickers bar, you're going to do something, enjoy it. Don't feel guilty about it. But also don't expect that the scale's going to drop next week and be upset about it. Sure. You have to be able to say, okay, I decided, like you go, I gained 18 pounds. I decided that I'm okay with it. I'm not mad at myself. I'm not bitter. I had a good time. It was a good time with the kids. Now I'm back on track. Right. Yeah. But now I got to make up the extra 18 pounds of ground, but you make that quickly because you realize it's just water weight, because I can gain 3 pounds working out hard one day. So don't worry about 3 pounds.
I learned that new today on this right here. I didn't know that it was the insulin spike that made your body hold on to the salt in the water and everything. I knew that it was like water weight, but I never understood the concept of what water weight was.
Yeah, you'll be surprised. I know a thing or two about physiology. Yeah, I'm not just an actor.
Surprised me.
No, but I see it daily in my practice, because people don't realize that there's a trinity that we see, like obesity, diabetes, hypertension, right, and high triglycerides. But you realize, hey, when I get that insulin under control, when people understand, like I would have loved to see where your insulin was 105 pounds ago compared to now. I know you dropped it by 80% probably, right? Gotcha. But that's when you got back from your trip, if I checked your insulin, it would have been really high. and then you fast and you eat low carb and you drop that insulin down and you pee out. That's why when people start a ketogenic diet, the worse you eat before you come to me, the smarter I'm going to look, because you're going to drop a lot of water weight at the beginning. So if you don't, and you're eating healthy already, don't expect to lose 30 pounds like you read on social media. Sure. That's not going to happen for you. But there's other people. So it's really like a one size fits all. Well, one size fits one, because I have guys who one of my guys, I show his stuff. He's vegan and he eats a ton of fruit juice, but he works out 3 hours a day. He's like, when you were dancing, you can get away with it. But when you're sitting on the couch doing nothing, then you can't get away with that, right? Nope. So you adjust your diet to your lifestyle and your lifestyle to your diet, and you kind of just see what works for you, right? So we're going to have fun, A1C?
Man. What is insulin like your A1C?
Well, insulin is, the A1C is a 3-month sugar average, right? So it gives us the climate for your area. You know, the sugar is the weather that day. The climate says, what has it been for the last 3 months, right? But insulin is what goes up to get rid of the extra sugar, right? So insulin is a hormone that you release. So the more sugar you eat, the more you raise your insulin. So when people have really high insulin, what does it make you do? Have high blood pressure. It makes you, it can affect mental functioning, anxiety, stress. So when we started seeing these things clinically, we were amazed. Like, look, when they drop their insulin, they're doing better. As a matter of fact, someone just posted yesterday, a 66-year-old patient of hers had a massive heart attack years ago, normal cholesterol, everything's normal. 3-month sugar average looks fine. But her insulin was like over 100. That's a total disaster. And that's what I had to step back in my practice and look at insulin levels. And we'll talk about that hopefully when we get together on the medical aspects of this, because that's very important. Because if you get a little insulin resistant over the weekend, you gain 3 or 4 or 5 pounds, that's water weight. Who cares? It's not real fat that's in your love handles and everything, right? And you can lose that. It's weight on the scale, but it's not real fat weight. So when people think they lost 20 pounds of fat in a week, you didn't. You lost water weight. You lost salt, right? So that's why on the low carb and ketogenic diet, we say eat more salt, because you're going to lose salt because you're not holding on to it with insulin. But what we tell patients when they have high blood pressure, well, the first thing the doctors say, Ro, you have high blood pressure, cut your salt out. Yeah. And I'm saying, hey, let's cut the insulin down. And then you can eat salt. And it doesn't. Dr. Unwin has shown this in England, that when they got the insulin under control, people ate salt all the time and they weren't raising their blood pressure. It's not the salt that's the problem. It's the high insulin plus the salt that's the problem.
Gotcha. So, I'm a salt addict.
Yeah. And if you drop your insulin level down, who cares? You just pee it back out. Not a big deal. And the fact that, you're better off being a salt addict than a sugar addict.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Or both. I mean, I guess most of us are both. We enjoy all that stuff.
Oh, when I was both, it was horrible, but yeah,
man, I'm happy for you. I'm happy for your new journey. I'm happy for all the stuff you did, what you've accomplished. And then I think just being a real guy and saying, hey, look, I have struggles. I mean, people are going to love this, and it's so important. So
truly appreciate
I hope we don't lose followers. I hope all of our followers don't just jump over to you, but I'm kidding you.
No,
I'm kidding. But hey, everyone, you can listen to more than one podcast, right? So, thanks for inviting me on. I'm excited. I'm really happy that you got to come on here. And we got to chit chat for a little while. It's really great to get to know you better. We had a great conversation, but I think the stuff you're talking about, we are 100% in there. Even though we're zealots, we still love to say, hey, look, let's look at different approaches. If something else is working for someone, sustainability, I'm all ears.
100%. And, I'll say this. I think the thing that makes me hopefully different is, everybody wants to lecture you on, finding your reason, or you've got to do it for your health and whatever. And I want to be realistic. When I say find your reason, man, I don't care if it's because you want to wear great clothes, or you want to go out and you want to be able to pleasure your mate better, because God knows when you're fat, you were not like, I listened to Big Pun and he's like, 400, 500 pounds. He has that song, I'm not a player, I just crush a lot. And I'm like, no, you don't. Not at 400 or 500 pounds, So find your reason. I don't care what it is, and that's why I want people to come and check us out, because we're going to be having really humorous but real conversations like that, I know somebody who used to use a 3-foot shoe horn because they couldn't get down and put their shoes on. And one of their goals was like, I'm done. I just want to be able to put my shoes on. And I'm like, great, So I think, we need doctors like yourself. We need people who are actually going to tell us what to do. But then we also need people who are just going to be like, just enjoy yourself too, like enjoy the ride, find out what makes you happy and run for it.
Yeah, you can have fun on the hike. You could stop and look around and enjoy it. Don't go, I just want to get to the top. Say,
Yeah.
okay, let me enjoy this road a little bit. Let me make the best of it. Sometimes it's terrible, but you realize once you get out, like I was riding my bike this weekend, we had to go up this big hill. And anyways, riding all the way up, I was like, what a hassle this is. This is brutal. It was brutal hike. I mean, climb. And then on the other side going down, it's like, oh, I didn't have to pedal. That's so easy. This is great. But then I had to come back. I'm like, oh no, what I loved before, now I hate it. Now what I hated before, now I love it, because it's like, oh, I get to relax again when I'm coming down. So, the work is worth it, but all that energy coming down was energy we put in going up.
Yes.
Right? So, but I think, that's why I love what you're doing. So
let me ask you a question. When
Yeah.
you started your journey, what was your reason?
My reason was I saw a patient. I struggled with my weight my entire life. I was doing the standard of care. I was doing the ADA's recommended diet, eating 6 small meals throughout the day. I'm having green shakes and all this stuff, and I'm gaining weight, and I'm working out 6 days a week. I go, okay, something's wrong, because I'm pretty sure I know if I'm cheating or not, and I'm not. So it wasn't working. And then one of my patients comes in. He's like, I look at his weight, and I look at him, and I look at his weight. I'm like, did you lose 40 pounds? He goes, yeah. Like, what'd you do? Because I'm thinking you have cancer. That's the first thing. You either have diabetes or cancer. And this is a guy who's always been overweight. He goes, I did this crazy fast diet. Oh, what is that? I fast 2 days a week, 500 calories or less, no carbs. I go, okay, let me reason this out. If you eat 500 calories on Tuesday, then you must be starving Wednesday twice as much. He goes, no, I'm not even hungry Wednesday. How can that be? If you don't eat, you got to be hungry. Well, I'm not. I don't know. And he started, because the other days he would eat whatever he wanted. I go, this doesn't make any sense. So then I come across Jason Fung, who we'll connect you with, who said, look, fasting lowers insulin levels. If you lower insulin levels, you're not hungry all the time. If you're not hungry all the time, you're not eating all the time. So then this is what we're seeing now. So I go, maybe I'll try it. So I'll try fasting. I'll try eating lower carbohydrates. I'll cut out sugar and all this, because I was having, whole wheat toast for lunch, right, with tuna fish. I'm having rice crackers for snacks. I'm having, some apples and nuts together. And then I'm having green shakes for breakfast. So I was just spiking my insulin like crazy, trying to lose weight. I'm like, okay, this isn't working. So let me try doing what he's doing, see, and either the guy's crazy or not. And Jason wasn't selling anything on his video. He was just saying, this is what works. So I started losing weight. I'm like, oh, then my patient's like, doc, you're losing weight. And I'm like, oh, what do I do now? And then I went to LowCarbUSA, saw all these other doctors practicing this kind of medicine and hearing their results, and say, I'll try it. I had 11 people come off insulin in 6 months. I had never seen that in my career, practicing for 15 years at that time. I thought, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So one of my partners was an endocrinologist, and we were arguing. He's saying it's dangerous, it's crazy. I go, why? What do you tell people? If however many carbs they eat at lunch, you tell them to shoot that much insulin. So what you're saying is every time they're eating a bunch of carbs, they have to shoot it. You don't say how much fat are you eating, how much protein are you eating. You say how much carbohydrate are you eating. Let me shoot insulin to get rid of that, because you're gonna love. I mean, I'll sit down with you and show you my continuous glucose readings on people that you'll see. Pozole, all this stuff you're mentioning, I can tell you exactly what it does physiologically, right? So it's fun to see, and what exercise does, and what other things do. Stress does, not sleeping, hating the world, whatever. All those things play a role. So that's how I got started. I go, okay, I'm losing weight, I'm feeling better, my energy is better, my focus is better, because before I'd be like starving all day and when to eat. At 10 o'clock, I'd be hungry every day. Once I cut out my carbs, I look at my watch like, oh, it's 1 o'clock. I haven't eaten lunch and I didn't have my snack. What happened? My brain wasn't because it's like a dog. They know what time when it's time to eat. You can change the time. They know what time it is to eat. They don't care about the time change until they get used to that again, right?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of us are just, creatures of habit, and that's what we do instead of saying, okay, let me step back and reassess this stuff. And of course, that patient, I rolled him out for cancer, I rolled him out for diabetes, and all of his numbers look good. I'm like, this is pretty crazy stuff, right? This is kind of cool. So I think a lot of doctors just don't. I hear it all the time. I have tons of patients who come to me and they've lost 80 pounds, they've lost 90 pounds. The doctor goes, this is dangerous, don't do this. And they go, I feel better. My mental stuff is better. It makes you crazy sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to find a doctor. I haven't found one in Los Angeles. I want to change, have an MD who understands what I'm doing. Every single time I go to my doctor, they're like, are you still on that crazy diet? You should be eating more vegetables and all these other different things that he's talking to me about. So,
well, there's a Dr. Charlene Lichtash. She's there in LA, and I know she's well trained, and she's done a lot of good work too. And she's kind of doing what I'm doing up in LA. Oh, so I can connect you if you want to talk to her. Yeah, there's so many good people out there. I'm telling you that we need more doctors who get it, because people are coming to me from all over. It's like, I feel bad. It's like, why are you coming from? I'm getting licensed in Arizona right now because I have so many people coming in. I'm like, well, I'll just get licensed in Arizona. Maybe I'll take a trip out there every now and again, and
One of my best friends is still a choreographer and a dancer. And he ended up I mean, supposedly was healthy and was drinking like a liter of orange juice and like doing the green shakes and doing all this stuff, and had gotten a little heavier, but wasn't overweight. And all of a sudden I got a message from him. He's in the hospital. He can barely see, he's scared.
Diabetes.
Yeah. And he had diabetes, and his A1C, I think, was 13. And then I think his cholesterol was like at 1100 or something like that. And it was because of all the stuff that you were just saying. Like he was eating oatmeals or like oats, and he was eating lots of fruit juices and green juices and all that. And it almost killed him. And now he does what we do. And, his numbers are just so low now.
Yeah, that's what's great. I think you're going to bring attention to these things. I had 4 patients in my practice get diabetes doing a juice fast because they're just drinking just sugar all day. And they wonder why then all of a sudden they're losing weight. They go, I thought I was losing weight. Great. But it turns out your sugar's 450. That's not a good way to lose weight, because you'll lose weight that way, but you're going to be dead in a few hours. So yeah, it's all that. It's just really educating people and helping, and so love what you're doing, man. So
thank you, sir.
How do people if they want to start following you, or if they want to start seeing what you're doing, how do they get in touch with you? And the other thing I would love too, and this may be part of what you're doing, is Vic offered himself. Vic is all these different cultures we've dealt with. We have Italian goes keto. We have Greek goes keto. We have all these people, and so it would be great just to see all these different cultures. How do you do it? How do you do it in your culture? How do you do it in this culture, right? My Latina ladies are killing it. They have different tortillas. They wrap in lettuce. Their family makes it from that way when they come over. All those things. And so it's cool when you start seeing cultures that we gave up on, they can do it. Whether you're Lebanese or whether you go, hey, I want to hold to my traditional roots, but I'll just make it a little different.
Sure. Find me on Instagram, Keto Filmmaker. And then the podcast, we're going to record the first one, I think next week or the week after. And it's just called Fat in America. So you go on wherever podcasts are when it comes out. I know we're going to record a bunch of them and then release them sometime in September.
Awesome.
But yeah, just find me, Keto Filmmaker, and we're building an amazing community. So I would love to hear from everybody.
Awesome. Well, we will do some Zoom meetings and talk about this and get people involved. This is exciting.
That'd be terrific.
So thanks for joining us. Great to have you. And everyone, thank you. Thank you for your continued support. Thank you for all you're doing. And there's going to be more and more things like this. This is why I'm kind of fired up. What Ro's doing, what Maria is doing, what all these people are doing collectively is pretty amazing. There's great films coming out. One called Reverse, the documentary of following people reversing their diabetes. So anyway, there's a lot of great people in there. Maria happens to be in that also. So everyone, enjoy this week. Thanks for listening, and keep being healthy.